Video we're going to review how Python handles exceptions. It's a little bit different than you might see in some other languages like Java or C#. In Java you have checked exceptions and you have to handle those or you have to throw those or else you can't compile your code. In Python, there's not really checked exceptions, but it does have some similar functionality to what you might have in Java. So basically in Python, when you want to handle an exception, you use try and except. Instead of Java where it's try and catch, here in Python you're using try and except. So for example, this code here, if we try to add a string and a number together, it doesn't do automatic concatenation. So if we run this, after we connect, what this is going to do is it's going to cause an exception, and you can see here, here we go. We get this except block that basically says, you can't do that. So you can actually handle specific types of errors just like you might handle specific types of exceptions in Java. For example, if you get a type error, you can handle that directly. You can say catch error except type error. Now, what actually happens here is just to illustrate that that's a specific type of error. If we run this block, you'll see this has an exception, but it's not actually caught because we're only handling the name error here. So if we comment that line out and run it again, you'll see everything's fine. It doesn't actually do anything because it doesn't print anything. It doesn't cause that problem. Now, you can use multiple except blocks in order to catch different types of errors. So you can see you can mix types here. So this will give you this type error when you mix these two types. But we ignore the name error code completely. It only happens if we run into that specific type of error. And then you can also, just like in Java where you can catch a specific exception, then you have an object that represents that exception. If we run this code, you can see the details of this particular name error. So you can see there, this particular one, it has this particular argument. You can also declare several types together so that you can handle them all at once. So there you go. So that way, if you have specific things you want to handle, but other ones you want to let go, you can identify things that way. Now, with except, you also have an else. So basically, this happens if there were no errors. So in this particular situation, if we have totally fine, no errors, then we're actually going to get to this else block. So try and except also allow you to specify an else. And you can also specify a finally. Just like in Java, finally happens no matter what, whether there's an exception or not. And you can see here, this happens regardless of what other things happen. So try and finally, again, you don't need an except if you use finally, but it's just going to send the error along. So if we run this, you'll see we do get an error, but we still output that message. So finally happens no matter what, whether there's an error or not. And if we don't actually handle that error, then we're going to continue to see that error in other parts of our code. Now in Python, you can raise errors. You can actually cause an error to happen. So if I run this code, I'm going to get an error, which is kind of what we wanted here. And then you can create your own exceptions. So you could raise, build your own exceptions and then raise those if you so choose. Now, one of the reasons you might run into some errors is anytime you're dealing with I/O. Just like in Java, you have a lot of checked exceptions when you're dealing with I/O. In Python, if you want to work with a file, you might run into some errors. But if we want to open a file, we just use this open function. It's right in the language. You don't have to import anything. You don't have to get any modules. And we open a file, and then W is for writing. So if we want to write a new file, open, and then W is the parameter. Then we write that file, and then we close it. So if we run that, nothing's actually going to happen. And if we write another file, we sometimes use with. This will close the file automatically, narrows the program scope, so anything that's going on with the file happens within that with block. So now we should have two files on the file system called somefile.txt and another file.txt. So if we want to read those files, we can use with open some file as f. If we read that file in, you can see this is some text in my file, just like we put in the file up here. And then if we append, So, write, append, read. If we append, then we add another line to that file that we wrote right up here. So, and if we run that a few times, we'll get another line every single time we run it, just to show like this is, since we're opening this for append, we add new files. So, you can kind of imagine like a log file might work in that way. And then just using try except here, we can try, and if we open a file that doesn't exist, we're going to get a file not found error. And there's a handful of other file errors, so you can take a look at those in the Python documentation. So that should give you a quick overview of how to work with errors in Python, how to handle exceptions, how to work with files, and you might need some of this as you get further into your Python projects. Thanks for watching today.